Most people walk into a liquor store, glance at the bottom shelf, and keep moving. The bottles down there look ordinary. The labels are plain. Nobody is talking about them at dinner parties or posting them on Instagram. And that is exactly why you should be paying attention. The bourbon world has a serious perception problem right now. Marketing dollars have convinced an entire generation of drinkers that price equals quality. That if a bottle does not cost at least $60, it cannot possibly be worth your time. What that belief has created is an enormous gap in the market. A collection of bottles that consistently outperform their price tag, win blind tastings, and get quietly recommended by bartenders who actually know what they are doing. While everyone else is fighting over allocated bottles and paying secondary market prices for labels they recognize, the people who actually understand bourbon are filling their shelves with something else entirely. These 8 bottles are not secrets because the whiskey inside them is mediocre. They are secrets because the brands behind them spent their budget on the liquid instead of the advertising. And in a market flooded with hype, that is the most underrated decision a distillery can make. We are going from solid to absolutely unbelievable value. By the end of this, you will have a completely different idea of what your bourbon budget can actually buy you. Let's get into it. Number 8, Old Fitzgerald Bottled in Bond. Here is a name that has been sitting on shelves since 1870 and still gets overlooked every single day. Old Fitzgerald is a wheated bourbon, which means wheat replaces rye as the secondary grain in the mash bill. That substitution creates something softer, rounder, and noticeably sweeter than your typical rye-forward Kentucky straight. Heaven Hill owns it now, and they release it in small batches at 100 proof under the Bottled in Bond designation. That designation matters more than most people realize. To carry it, the bourbon must come from a single distillery, produced in a single distilling season, aged a minimum of 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse, and bottled at exactly 100 proof. No blending tricks, no flavoring, no shortcuts. The law demands it. That legal guarantee was established by the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897, which was essentially the first consumer protection law in American spirits history. It existed because the whiskey market at the time was flooded with adulterated products, and the government stepped in to create a standard drinkers could actually trust. Over a century later, that standard still holds. Old Fitzgerald typically runs somewhere between $25 and $35 depending on your market, and what you get for that money is genuinely remarkable. The wheated mash bill delivers honeyed caramel, soft baking spice, butterscotch, and a finish that carries a gentle warmth without any harsh edges. It drinks closer to something in the $50 to $60 range. If this bottle had a darker label, a heavier bottle, and a better Instagram presence, people would be paying double without hesitation. The fact that it does not is entirely your advantage. Number 7, Benchmark Full Proof. Most people know the Benchmark name as an entry-level bargain you grab when you need a mixer and nothing else will do. The standard expression sits at 80 proof, fine for cocktails and essentially nothing more. But Buffalo Trace quietly released a full-proof version under that same overlooked label, and almost nobody noticed. The full-proof version comes in at 125 proof, pulled directly from the barrel without any dilution, and it retails in most states for right around $30. Let that land for a second. A barrel-proof bourbon from one of the most respected distilleries in Kentucky, sitting quietly on the shelf next to its watered-down sibling, and most shoppers walk straight past it without a second glance. The flavor profile delivers everything you want from a barrel-strength expression. Big vanilla and caramel up front, followed by toasted oak, dried fruit, and a long warming finish that keeps developing in the glass long after the sip. It shares the same distillery DNA as Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare. Same water source, same production process, same rickhouse aging in the same Frankfort, Kentucky warehouses that produce some of the most sought-after bourbon in the world. The only meaningful difference is the label. Nobody is posting about benchmark foolproof on bourbon forums. Nobody is lining up outside stores at 6 in the morning waiting for an allocation. It is just sitting there on the shelf, completely accessible, waiting for the drinker who actually reads the label instead of chasing the name. At $30 for a genuine barrel-proof expression from Buffalo Trace, this is one of the most straightforward value propositions in American whiskey right now. Number 6, Medley Brothers Kentucky Straight Bourbon. This one takes a little hunting in some markets, but the search is worth every minute. Lux Row Distillers out of Bardstown, Kentucky produces the Medley Brothers expression, and it represents a style of bourbon making that larger producers have largely moved away from in the pursuit of consistency and volume over character. Bottled at 103 proof and aged a minimum of 6 years, Medley Brothers carries an actual age statement on the label at a time when most distilleries have quietly retired that practice entirely to protect their aging inventory. Removing an age statement is a business decision, not a quality decision. It gives a distillery flexibility to release younger whiskey when stocks run short without consumers noticing the difference. When a brand keeps the age statement, it is making a commitment. Medley Brothers is making that commitment at 6 years, at over 100 proof, and at a price that sits around $30 to $40. 6 years in a Kentucky warehouse means real barrel influence. You are not getting a young, sharp, grain-forward spirit dressed up with clever marketing. You are getting caramel, leather, dark cherry, and a rye-driven spice that builds slowly through the mid-palate and finishes long and satisfying. The Medley name has roots going back to 1812 in Kentucky bourbon history, but the marketing budget to tell that story simply does not exist at this price point. What does exist is the bourbon itself, and honestly, that is more than enough. Number 5, Heaven Hill Green Label. The great irony of Heaven Hill is that they produce some of the most beloved bourbon expressions in America, and their own house label barely gets a mention in any serious conversation about value. Heaven Hill Green Label is a 6-year aged Kentucky straight bourbon bottled at 80 proof and priced somewhere around $12 to $15. Yes, that number is correct. For less than the cost of a single cocktail at most bars, you are getting 6 full years of Kentucky barrel aging from one of the most experienced and historically important distilling families in the country. The Heaven Hill Distillery in Bardstown has been producing bourbon since 1935 and survived a catastrophic warehouse fire in 1996 that destroyed over 90,000 barrels of aging whiskey and caused losses estimated at around $25 million. They rebuilt, maintained their production standards, and kept making honest bourbon without changing the formula or inflating the price to recover losses. The Green Label does not trade on any of that history. It does not need to. What it delivers is rich grain sweetness, warm vanilla, a touch of toasted oak, and a finish that holds up in any cocktail application you can think of. Bartenders who understand their craft keep this bottle behind the bar for high-volume service because it mixes cleanly and consistently without sacrificing the essential character of a properly made Kentucky straight. If you need a daily mixing bourbon that you are not embarrassed to pour for guests, and you need to keep your costs honest, nothing else at this price point comes close. Number 4, Very Old Barton Bottled in Bond. Kentucky has a long and proud tradition of producing no-nonsense bourbon for drinkers who want the real thing without the theater. Very Old Barton is that tradition condensed into a bottle and sold at a price that makes every small craft distillery charging $70 for a 2-year-old spirit look genuinely difficult to justify. Produced at the Barton 1792 distillery in Bardstown, it comes in several proof variations, but the bottled in bond version is the one that earns a permanent spot on your shelf. At 100 proof, carrying the full weight of that legal designation, Very Old Barton delivers brown sugar, vanilla, and a rye spice that builds through the mid-palate and finishes with warm baking notes and a lingering oak backbone. It typically runs around $15 to $20. The Barton 1792 distillery behind it has been producing bourbon in Kentucky since 1879 and operates one of the largest rickhouse operations in the state. Very Old Barton is essentially the honest working bourbon they have been producing for generations because the people who know bourbon keep buying it quietly and consistently without needing to be marketed at. It does not win awards at flashy press events with celebrity judges and branded glassware. It wins arguments in blind tastings when the bottles are wrapped in brown paper and the pretension disappears along with the labels. At this price, with this proof, with this legal guarantee behind it, Very Old Barton is one of the most defensible purchases in the entire bourbon category. Number 3, Knob Creek Smoked Maple. Before you skip ahead, hear this out completely. Flavored whiskey has a well-earned reputation for being a shortcut designed for drinkers who do not particularly enjoy the taste of bourbon and need something sweeter to make it palatable. Knob Creek Smoked Maple is something categorically different, and it gets dismissed entirely by association with that reputation. The base spirit here is genuine Knob Creek bourbon. That means you are starting with a 9-year aged Kentucky straight at 100 proof. That is not a young, thin, grain-forward spirit getting dressed up with artificial flavoring to hide its flaws. That is a fully developed, properly barrel-aged bourbon with real depth and character. And the natural maple smoke layered into it works in a way that almost no other flavored expression manages to pull off. It runs around $30 to $40, and what you get in the glass is genuinely interesting. Campfire smoke, dark caramel, vanilla, dried fruit from nearly a decade of aging, and a sweetness that feels like a natural extension of the bourbon, rather than something poured in from a bottle of extract. In a cocktail setting, it does things that no other spirit on this list quite replicates. An old-fashioned made with Knob Creek smoked maple tastes like a campfire dessert in crystal. A simple pour over a large ice cube on a cold night is one of the more satisfying experiences in American whiskey at any price. The problem is the category label. Serious bourbon drinkers walk past anything with the word maple on it because they have been burned by cheap synthetic candy-sweet products that bear no relationship to real whiskey. That assumption is costing them one of the most thoughtfully produced bottles in the entire Knob Creek lineup and one of the most interesting flavor experiments in affordable American spirits right now. Number 2, Wathen Single Barrel. Wathen's is the kind of discovery that makes you genuinely frustrated you did not find it years ago. Produced by Charles Medley Distillery in Owensboro, Kentucky, Wathen's Single Barrel is aged approximately 6 to 8 years and bottled at 94 proof directly from individual barrels with no batching and no blending for consistency. What came out of that one barrel is what goes into those bottles, full stop. And what comes out is extraordinary for the price. The flavor profile delivers dark fruit, polished leather, milk chocolate, and a slow-building spice that lingers through a finish lasting considerably longer than anything in this price range has any right to. The price sits around $30 to $40 depending on your state, and for a single barrel bourbon with genuine age and that quality of complexity, that number remains almost impossible to justify from a logical standpoint. Producers releasing single barrel expressions with similar age profiles under more recognized names routinely charge $80 to $100 or more, and the Wathen family has been making bourbon in Kentucky since the 18th century. That heritage has simply never been packaged into a marketing campaign compelling enough to drive mainstream consumer recognition. Walk into any well-stocked bourbon bar and quietly ask the bartender what they personally reach for on their nights off. A meaningful number of them will mention Wathen's without any hesitation. That kind of industry respect, unaccompanied by public profile, is the clearest signal that what is inside the bottle is the whole story. There is nothing else propping it up. Number 1, Mellow Corn Bottled in Bond. This is the one that is going to surprise the most people, And honestly, that reaction is the precise reason it belongs at the top of this list. Mellow corn is a straight corn whiskey, not a bourbon, which means it is produced from a mash bill of at least 80% corn and aged and used rather than new charred oak barrels. That single difference in aging vessel creates a flavor profile that occupies its own distinct territory. The used oak delivers a softer, gentler wood influence than new charred barrels. The resulting whiskey is lighter in color, more grain-forward in character, and carries a sweetness that is clean and natural rather than the rich caramelized depth you associate with standard Kentucky straight bourbon. It sits somewhere between bourbon and something that has no easy comparison, and that is exactly what makes it interesting. Heaven Hill produces it under the full bottled in bond designation. 100 proof, single distilling season, federally bonded warehouse, minimum 4 years of aging. Every legal guarantee that designation provides applied to a whiskey most consumers do not even know exists. The price is where this becomes genuinely difficult to believe. Most markets carry it somewhere between $14 and $18. For a bottled in bond expression from one of Kentucky's most respected distilling families, produced under strict legal standards, and aged for a minimum of 4 years, that is a number that simply does not compute by any rational measure of bourbon market pricing. The flavor delivers fresh corn sweetness up front, light caramel, a delicate vanilla note, and a clean finish that steps aside gracefully rather than overstaying its welcome. In cocktails, it performs beautifully. A mellow corn whiskey sour is one of the most underrated drinks in the entire canon of American spirits. A mellow corn and ginger over ice on a summer evening is an argument for simplicity that is nearly impossible to refute. And sipped neat, slowly, with a little patience, it offers something that no bourbon on any shelf at any price point quite replicates. The whiskey world has spent decades convincing consumers that new oak aging and the bourbon designation are the only markers of quality worth paying attention to. Mellow corn exists as a quiet, $14 rebuttal to that argument. It is different. It is honest. It is produced with full legal integrity by people who have been making American whiskey longer than most brands have existed. And it costs less than a single cocktail at a mid-range bar in any American city. So what is the actual pattern connecting all 8 of these bottles? Because there is one, and understanding it changes how you shop for bourbon permanently. Every single expression on this list shares one common thread. The producer made a deliberate choice somewhere in the business plan to invest in what goes inside the bottle rather than what surrounds it. No celebrity endorsements, no limited edition drop strategies engineered to manufacture scarcity and drive secondary market prices. No heavy bottles with embossed wax seals and magnetic gift boxes designed to justify a higher retail price before the consumer even opens it. Just genuinely well-made American whiskey priced according to what it actually costs to produce, rather than what the market's current appetite for prestige will absorb. The bourbon industry is in a peculiar moment right now. Demand has outrun supply for well over a decade, and that imbalance has handed brands an enormous amount of pricing power. When consumers are willing to pay $150 for something that costs $15 to produce, purely because the bottle looks expensive and the allocation story creates urgency, the financial incentive to pass savings along to the customer essentially disappears. The brands on this list exist in the gap that dynamic creates. Producers with genuine heritage and consistent quality who have simply never had the marketing infrastructure to turn that quality into mainstream hype. That is not a permanent condition. As the bourbon community gets more sophisticated about value, as blind tasting results continue to embarrass allocated bottles with famous names, as more drinkers discover that the whiskey they actually prefer, when the labels are hidden, costs a fraction of what they have been paying, these bottles get found. Recognition builds, prices adjust, the window closes, Every single bottle on this list is still inside that window right now. The question is how long that remains true. The answer, based on how quickly the bourbon community moves when it finds something worth talking about, is probably not as long as you would hope. If you found this useful, hit subscribe. We break down the real value in spirits every week across every category, and we never accept money from brands to shape what we recommend. See you in the next one.